Welcome to What's the Latest at Ideate Software. My name is Richard Taylor with Ideate Software, and I appreciate you joining me today for this presentation. I think we'll probably be about 45 minutes or an hour. So again, thank you for your time and attention. So just a second here. So again, my name is Richard Taylor. I have a background in architecture and over 19 years of Revit experience. I was fortunate enough to be one of the original employees at Revit Technology back in the day, before it was acquired by Autodesk. And then I worked at Autodesk for a number of years as a product manager and also on support and sales. And then I've worked in various software development companies over the years. And like many of you, I've worked in both large and small architecture firms. So you can always contact me for any additional questions at richard.taylor@ideatesoftware.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at rwtaylor_Revit. And I'm going to give you that email here in a moment too as well again. So I wanted to start by just kind of giving you a current snapshot of where we are. This presentation is what's the latest. So you can go to www.ideatesoftware.com/download. And there we have our installation of all of our current solutions. So right now we have 5 Revit add-on solutions. And you'll see there we are supporting the latest or updates. So we made updates in May of this year in 2019. That's for versions of Revit 2020 back through 2017. So it is a single install, meaning that you can choose to install any, when you go ahead and install one of our applications, you can actually choose any of those 2017 through 2020. So what I mean by that is everything that you see today as far as the latest updates are available for all of those Revit versions. And as I said, we made our most recent updates to our solutions in May of 2019, basically to coordinate with the new Revit 2020 release that was released about mid-April. We also did a point release back in December of last year. And so you may not be familiar with some of those particular features or benefits, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. And then the the icing on the cake, if you will, is that we introduced a new solution in June, so just last month of this year, and that is ID8 Style Manager. So I'm going to be talking about that today, in addition to the current state and new features of our solutions. So again, before I kind of start talking about sort of technical aspects and features and benefits, I really want to spend some time and just say, how do we improve and how do we basically look at what features to implement and how do we look at what improvements to make? Well, really 90% of that comes from you, our customers. So, we love feedback. So the fact that you can go to any of our solutions and, on the pull down menu, of course, you've got the help and check for updates, but there is a, request feature or report a bug or issue. You can also check the support. And so then you can, if you are having a particular issue or question, you can log a support case as well. And so we'd love to know anything that you're experiencing that, let's say, doesn't make sense within our online help or our in-product help. You'll see that we do make a lot of effort to make sure that we try to document many of the workflows and processes. So if there is something that's maybe a little bit confusing or not quite as clear, we'd love to hear from you. And for all of our existing Ideate Software customers, we have an Ideate Software beta program. So I'd like to invite any of you that are current customers. Basically, the only requirement is that you own one of any of our solutions that you see there, the 5 solutions, ID8 BIM Link, ID8 Explorer, ID8 Sticky, ID8 Apps, or now ID8 Style Manager. And here's where I said you could I'll give you that email again. You can send an email to richard.taylor@ideatesoftware.com and say that you're interested in the beta program, and I will send you a link. Now, I want to be sort of clear on this in the sense that it's not necessarily a huge commitment of your time. We're not asking you to always install, beta software and test that. Of course, many times that is the case, but there's also surveys, there's questions that are sent out. In fact, we are in the middle of a survey right now about some improvements to our ID8 Sheet Manager, our ID8 clone, and just the overall sheet and view tools within ID8 Apps. So much of the time it's questions and it's information that we are asking you, as opposed to having to install a particular beta software, because I know that can be difficult sometimes, especially when you're in production. A lot of times, Autodesk always recommends that you have a separate machine, you're installing the beta software on a separate machine, and you're doing testing, and again, that's sort of a big commitment, and we realize that's not always the case. So I want to make it clear that a lot of times you can join our beta program and participate in surveys and feedback and questionnaires, and not necessarily have to have a separate machine just for testing software and so forth. So I think it would be great. I certainly welcome anyone that is an ID8 software customer to send me an email to get feedback. And again, a lot of our enhancements and feedback that we do, or I should say improvements, are directly resulting from this feedback that we get from our beta program. So like I said, I encourage you to join. So with that, I'd like to go through our 5 solutions and just give you kind of a whet your appetite on some new features and benefits that we've introduced along the way. So as you know, ID8 BIM Link is all about precise Revit data control. ID8 BIM Link allows you to export and import all of the parameter data into Excel, and you can use Excel for reviewing the information, or maybe even modification, and then importing that back in to make changes to the model. So what we've done is we've added, again, these are these requests that we see from our customers. The idea that, in the view templates, you were always able to rename the view template, be able to assign the template to different views. But when you look at sort of the properties of that view template, sort of the controls, a lot of those controls weren't accessible. So that was a request from our customers to have more control. So what we've done is we've added top-level access to the properties that you see on the screen here that are in yellow. And what I mean by top-level properties is, good example is, you see there the VG overrides. That's where you say edit, you have another dialog box appears, and you've actually kind of go into what I'd call sort of subcategories, or multiple sort of dialog windows. In that case, that was difficult for us because there, the way that the Revit interface is designed, there actually were several sort of dialogues. So those that don't require a sort of separate dialogue where you have to kind of go into multiple areas are now able to be controlled. So that's why I say top level categories. So you see there as an example, being able to display the model, or detail level as medium, fine, or coarse. Those things can now be controlled much easier. And so you'll see there, an example is, being able to tick that for, the fact that you can apply the VG overrides. You can apply the detail level, or in this case, the discipline. You have access to whether it's architectural, structural, coordination, or MEP. So a lot more control over the individual properties of the view templates, not just allowing you to apply them to a view, but be able to manipulate the properties. And then another request that came in is being able to understand that if the dimensions vary from the project unit, so that in Revit, you set what the default project unit is for your dimensions. So now we've added the ability to say that we have alternate units here, and then there's a unit format, so that now we've added a couple of our link definitions. And if you're familiar with ID8 BIM Link, you know that we do, again, a lot of work up front to define these link definitions, so to get you started. So I'm going to switch over here to Revit real quickly and just come over here to my ID8 Software tab. And just to kind of highlight again, when I talk about these link definitions, what I'm doing here is doing the load sample, right? And so when I typed in that, QC, I can go over here and go down to my quality control links, and you see there's all the QC links that I have here. So for instance, in that particular case when we were talking about, what was it, QC dimensions. So let's come over here and just say search here for dimensions, right? And now that particular link, right, has those properties built in by default. So now you notice that I see alternate units prefix, alternate units suffix. So we've set that up for you. And of course, at any time, if you don't like that as an example, like the prefix or suffix, you can remove those, or you can just basically modify these sample links however you like. But so we've, under the QC dimensions and the project standard dimensions, you now have those available properties. And then we've added a lot of MEP fabrication part support. If you're familiar, if this is your particular area in MEP, you know that Autodesk has made a lot of advancements on the fabrication side of things. And so we want to make sure that we're accessing that data. So now we have new links, and you'll see here, if I just type in FAB into the search window, all of these MEP fabrication, containment, ductwork, hangers, pipework are now available as, again, default links that are already defined for you to use. And then, we had people requesting the fact that they weren't making any changes to the link definition, but because of the way that ID8 BIM Link worked, if there were multiple people in the file, it was basically, sort of locking out the first person that opened up BIM Link. And even if you were just exporting a link, it would say, well, you don't have access to that. Now we're not checking out that data storage element for basically exporting and importing. So someone that's making a change to the link, like if I'm in this particular case, right, I'm actually in BIM Link and I'm, let's say, adding some properties, I've actually checked out that data storage link. But if another person is in the same project and also using BIM Link, they have the ability now to just say, all right, well, I want to take this furniture and I want to export it, or I want to import it. So the two basically aren't conflicting. So we've added some improvements. So if you are in a larger, let's say, firm where you've got multiple instances of ID8 BIM Link in the same project, they're going to be working and playing together a little bit easier. And then, as I mentioned, we did a point release in November of last year. And so this is something that we've typically done is, release the major, version to coincide with the Revit version. So in this case, Revit was updated to 2020 in April. So right after that, just a few weeks after, we updated all of our software solutions to 2020 and also added new features and enhancements. But along the year, we typically do a point release. So I just wanted to highlight some of those things from BIM Link from last year, which was we added the live editing, which I'm going to show in a moment here. And you'll see here, I'm not going to go through, read every single bullet point here, but we did make quite a few enhancements and feature updates to ID8 BIM Link for 2018, or I'm sorry, in November 2018. And so one of the largest things I think that maybe people aren't aware of is this new live editing, meaning that if you're working with ID8 BIM Link, and as I mentioned, you're exporting the information to Excel, making changes, importing that data back, now you don't necessarily have to go to Excel for, I would say, typically, let's say, small changes. So if you want to modify right in the dialog, you can do that. So we've added this live editing. So what I'm going to do here is now switch over to Revit, and we're going to come over here and just say from schedule, and I'm going to come down to my existing schedules that are in my project, and I'm going to go to a room schedule here and say next. And so you'll notice that it lists, the properties that I have are the room number, the room name, the room area. And I've got some finishes here that I might want to remove for this particular link. So now I'm just showing, the room number, the name, the area, and the room type. And this is now a live dialogue. So if I come over here and I say that the room number is going to be 501, and this is now going to be, let's say, I'm going to do my cap lock on here. So a town hall meeting space. And now when I say done, that basically initiates that change. So if I go over here and zoom up, you can see that now I've updated that information to town hall meeting space. So now I've actually, I've changed that room. If I look at the properties here, you notice that the name is now town hall meeting space, and then the room number is 501 over here in the properties palette. So that ID8 BIM Link dialog is active. So again, let's go to the room schedule here, so the properties. For anything that you want to change. And you'll notice that obviously the area is something that I can't change. That's a read-only Revit category. But if I wanted to go back to that same room, the town hall meeting space, and change it from a classroom to something else, I now have that available. So maybe that is a common space as an example. So now I'm changing that room type as well. And then that will be changed also in the when I select on that, you'll notice the room type is now over here in the properties palette common. So I think Excel is still excellent for if you're making large changes, but if you need to make those smaller changes, or you want to stay within BIM Link and not have to export out to Excel, that's a really nice feature to be able to do that live editing. And then we also in November gave you a lot more information, or a lot more ability to change information in object styles. And so, we were always able to have certain sort of properties associated with them that we could change. But now we can do things like, change the line color and the line pattern and the line style. So just a lot more of the properties that are exposed for editing or changing, not just reviewing, but also editing. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview of ID8 BIM Link. Now I'd like to get to our next solution, which is called ID8 Explorer. And if you're familiar with ID8 Explorer, it's all about fast data discovery of your Revit project with our ID8 Query and our IDWarnings Manager. So hopefully you're familiar with the IDWarnings Manager. We added that a little over a year ago. So we've continued to improve the warnings tab and the warnings tools. So one of the things that people had asked us is they'd like to be able to have a list of all the warnings within the project and be able to export that. And so now we're able to view a detail list of all the warnings, as you see there, our normal sort of detail view, and be able to then export that to Excel. And so it's listing, category, family type, element ID, and the created by for the warning. So that's a nice feature. And then we have a new workflow here that allows you to actually fix some very common warnings, like the duplicate instances. So now you can right click and you can say retain originals or retain latest. And I thought I'd show you that. So if I come over here to Revit again, let's bring up ID8 Explorer. And like I said, hopefully you're familiar with the fact that we have now our warnings tab. I'm going to switch over to the entire project here. And so this is showing me, all elements. I've got 36,000 elements here, and I've got, Explore tree, all of the organized here by category. But the navigate allows me to navigate to legends, schedules, sheets, and views. And you see that they're organized by views that are on a sheet or not on a sheet. So we're organizing all of these in a very logical way. And then the warnings here. So now I have 244 warnings. So you'll notice that there's this identical instances, right? So I've got 75 and I can look at these individual elements. Some of these look like curtain wall mullions, or I can go to the top level here now, and I can right click, and I can basically say that, I would like to either this is fixing it, retain originals or retain latest. So I know these are all duplicates, so I'd like to retain the original. So at this point, it builds a selection set of the original based on the element ID, so the lower element ID is the original one. And you see here that we have 64 curtain mullions and 11 pieces of furniture. Now, in my particular case, maybe the curtain wall mullions, there's a reason why they were duplicates. I had some overlapping curtain walls, but the furniture, there should be no reason why there are duplicates here. So what I want to do in this particular case is I want to delete, not all of them, but I just want to delete the furniture. So what I'm going to do is cancel this. Now what that does is it just cancels the deletion for the time being. They're still selected. So I want to go back to my Explore tab. I'm going to switch the display to my current selection. And you'll notice that I have 75 elements here, right? I've got 64 curtain wall mullions and 11 pieces of furniture. I'm just going to untick the curtain wall mullions. So now I have those 11 pieces of furniture that are duplicate. Then I can go to the ID8 delete here, and now I'm only deleting the furniture. So even though by default it comes up with both of them, I have the ability to sort of sub-select and say, well, you know what? I didn't want the curtain wall mullions. I only want the furniture. So now I'm going to delete that. Now, if I go back to my warnings, you know that notice how it says 64? All 64 of those were the curtain wall mullions. So in fact, in this particular case, if I'm done with that, I might want to say, you know what? Those are fine. Let's just hide those, meaning they're not going to be part of my warnings. So now I have 169 warnings, right? Another thing that I'm going to show here in a moment here is that the fact of I do have 169 warnings. If I come over here to my manage, I have a threshold here. So I've said there are 100 warnings per 100 megabyte file, which allows me 53. Well, 169 is above that. So that's why I have an alert icon here. But if I change this to like 300, that's going to be, actually it doesn't quite get there. Let's maybe make 400. That's going to go to now 214 warnings, right? So I'm going to say save and close. And now that alert icon, the second one, is no longer displayed. The reason that this icon is displayed, this first icon, is because I do have a warning that says highlighted floors overlap. So I can actually now select both of those real quickly here. Let's do a control key here and highlight both of those, and then say that I want to go and just look at those. So I want to isolate those elements. I just want to look at those two elements that I selected, right? And then I can sort of say like, oh, I can see pretty easily where that floor overlap is. So now I can edit the boundary and bring that back and say fix that, and we'll say cancel and say no. So now because I fixed that warning, there are no high-level ranked warnings based on my ranking system, and so that alert icon goes away. So there were two alert icons that I just basically removed. One was the number of high-ranked warnings. The other one was the threshold, and now I've reduced it. 168 is below my threshold. So I can continue now fixing these warnings. So again, the idea that I can switch over here to Explore or to have the Warnings Manager. So let's switch back over here. So that was a new workflow that requested, was the ability to sort of fix some of those common warnings like duplicate elements. And so, also with every new release, Revit always adds sort of elements. So we want to make sure that we are looking at the same elements. So for Revit 2020, we added the path of travel. And then we also added PDF images. That is a new feature within Revit. And then also being able to review or I should say geometry that is imported from Rhino and SAT, which is a 3D format. So, Revit looks at those as direct shapes. That's the name that it calls those when you import that geometry. And so we're able to review that information as a category for direct shape. And then with ID8 Query, we're giving you more information. Remember I mentioned with ID8 BIM Link, we have more access to the fabrication parts. So we've added that to Query as well as to select out elements by their pin status, which is kind of a nice feature as well. And if you're not familiar with Query, the way that we'll do that is, let's go back over here to Revit. I'm going to reset my temporary hide isolate, right? So that brings, basically now it's going to show the entire model. And let's say I wanted to come down over here to dimensions, and as an example, I have 1,321. Query allows you to dig a little bit deeper, and it gives you those properties and basically says like, oh, okay, well, you know what, I would like to have, let's say the suffix, what is as a value. So, and then maybe I also want to do, again, is pinned, is that dimension, for instance, pinned. So I can add that. So you see that most of these are not, they're false. So I can add up to 3 different selections. And like I said, dig a little bit deeper. So as an example, if I wanted to look at those that are, there are, let's say 2 that are verify and field. So if I select those 2, it's going to build that list, and then I can decide that where exactly those are located. So let's go ahead and fit that. Let's say, oops. And you can see that there I've got the verify and field this particular dimension that is accessed. So it allows me to query on the property values and be able to dig a little bit deeper. And so, like I said, we're always adding new properties that are exposed. And then I already mentioned this in some ways. We did an update in November, which is our point release, but we added the threshold, and that's what I showed you there. And we're also able to, we were always able to import a warnings ranking file, right? But now we're giving you the ability to not only import that ranking file, but be able to change the ranking status. Before this sort of interface, you actually had to edit the XML file, which was really kind of cumbersome. But now within the dialog, you can choose a particular warning and say whether it's high, medium, or low ranked, or not ranked at all. So that interface allows you to decide what your warnings ranking file is, and then be able to save that off as a company standard. And then our third solution is ID8 Sticky, which allows you to link Excel data into Revit with exceptional visual fidelity. So if, it works with Excel like ID8 BIM Link does, but ID8 BIM Link's all about the data. If you're, let's say, updating, as you saw, some of the parameter information from Revit through Excel and then back into Revit, Sticky is also working with Excel, but what it does is it takes the Excel sort of spreadsheet and just links it in as a schedule. So if you've got, let's say, general notes, or maybe some manufacturing data, or maybe data that's in a tabular format that you just want to be able to link that in, ID8 Sticky allows you to do that. So I know some people maybe aren't as familiar with ID8 Sticky, so I just thought I'd go ahead over here and select under the sheet. I'll go and just do a quick example where I would select here Sticky, and then I'm going to say create, and I've got some samples here, and I'll go out to my lighting fixture here, and I'll just pick now. You can choose from different worksheet regions, right? So for instance, if I wanted this Hadco lighting, I could select OK, and then that's going to bring that in as a basically now a schedule, and it's actually linked. So if the Excel file changes, it's going to update as well. So if I go over here to Sticky, you can see in the dialog that we have that it's current and that it's basically I'm available for editing this particular schedule and when it was last updated. And you're going to see this is actually fairly new, this ability to have an absolute or a relative path. Absolute is the location on the disk. Relative allows you to store that sticky or that Excel file underneath the project. And so with that, we've actually done a couple different updates. You saw those worksheet regions. We've done a lot of work to increase the performance of ID8 Sticky. So if you have a spreadsheet that has lots of named regions, as you see worksheet regions there in the example, the performance is going to be significantly faster. And then I already mentioned this, the ability to have this, in previous versions of ID8 Sticky, it was only an absolute path. So we basically had the exact directory location. Now you can choose to have a relative path where it's stored underneath your project folder. And then we've also done a number of, or a lot of work making sure that it plays nicely and it works well with BIM 360. So if you're using the desktop connector with BIM 360, you'll notice that that is now supported. In the example there, you see that under the whole path there starts out with BIM 360 and then it has the file location. And then we're always continually, again, getting feedback from our customers about specific formulas and let's say data that's within Excel that needs to be displayed correctly when it comes over to Sticky and showing in the schedule view. So you see there we've done a lot of improved support for formulas within Excel so that the resulting value of that formula is going to display properly on the Revit side with ID8 Sticky. Many of you are familiar with ID8 Apps, which is our collection of 9 productivity tools for all Revit users. So it's really all about focus-driven data manipulation and organization within your project. So we have, like I said, a whole series of applications or tools that are focused for all Revit users. So you see there we have, our ID8 Renumber, through our quick select, X-ray, spell check, and then our sheet and view tools, which are there in blue, the sheet manager, the align, the clone, and the view creator. So we did some updates for the May release that we basically updated several of the applications. You'll see ID8 Renumber, ID8 Quick Select, and ID8 Clone. And I also mentioned that we're in a current survey right now where we are looking at doing some pretty major improvements to the clone, the view creator, and it also kind of ties into some feature updates to ID8 BIM Link as well, being able to sort of create maybe some new views and sheets as part of this whole process. So if you are an existing ID8 software customer, I just again encourage you to join our beta program so that you can have access to that survey. So with ID8 Renumber, again, we've added a lot of, when we do something like that MEP fabrication content, we typically go through and look at it for all of our different applications. So in this case, you saw that I had a lot of MEP fabrication updates to ID8 BIM Link, to the query side with ID8 Explorer, and it's no different with ID8 Renumber, allowing you to renumber a lot of the MEP fabrication data. And so that now we have content, again, that is already set up so that you don't have to create it. You can just go and load the rule for these different MEP fabrication settings. And then we've added some new rules for Cobie. So if you are using the Cobie sort of data or Cobie formatting, this makes it a lot easier. And then again with Quick Select, very similar to ID8 Explorer, we've added support for the structural connections, the path of travel, and then our keynotes are now able to be organized under the keynotes tags themselves by whether it's a keynote created by element, whether it's a keynote created by material or by user. So Before, it would just kind of put all those under the Keynote tag, but now we've sort of organized those to make it a little bit easier for you. And then with Clone, which is allowing you to duplicate a sheet with the views on that sheet, we're able to more easily find and replace duplicated views, and we're actually telling you how many times a view has been cloned. You'll see there at the bottom of the screen or on the image, it shows you that this particular sheet has been cloned X many times. And then you can clone different sheets in one session, which is really nice. You don't have to close the dialog and restart it again. So it's just giving you very simplified overall user interface improvements. And so I think in the time that I have here, I want to kind of concentrate on our last software solution, which we just released in June, and that is ID8 Style Manager. And we've been given a lot of really good feedback on ID8 Style Manager. And the focus of Style Manager is really to do an analyze or analysis of all these different Revit styles. And we're calling them Revit styles, but it didn't necessarily kind of fit into one sort of nice category, if you will. But there are things like object styles, line types, patterns, view templates, filters, scope boxes. So all of those things that are kind of hard to manage within your project. So again, object styles, line patterns, fill patterns, material information, material asset information. This sort of standards, if you will, or these styles can start to get a little bit crazy. And so what happens is you may load a piece of content. You may load a family that's a furniture family, and you don't realize that that content of the furniture family also has some maybe defined line styles or defined patterns that are not matching your company standards. So all of a sudden, those now become part of your project because you loaded that content in, and you didn't realize that. And there's a lot of, let's say, imported line styles from AutoCAD that you didn't want in your project. So that's a lot to manage, and it's easy to load all this content and not really know what's happening. So that's where we developed ID8 Style Manager. So again, all these things starts to get kind of crazy as to how do you focus on which content, or I should say which styles are really matching your standards, and then are they being used, and is it safe to delete them or remove them or rename or merge. So you'll see that within the actual VG categories, right, when you go to the if I just to access this to show you where this is, if I go over to Revit, right, and if I come over here and I do that, if I have a particular subcategory that I've created under ceilings, right, I can create new, or I can delete those subcategories, not the top level categories, because that's part of sort of baked into Revit, but anything that I've created sort of custom or content that's been custom loaded in, I can remove that. But I have no idea if removing that is going to impact the sort of visual display of my drawings. Is it even being used? And if I delete it, well, then what's gonna, like for instance, in this case, this clearance that's gonna be, RGB 160 with a dashed dot line, what does it become? Well, it actually gets reset back to the top level category. So in this particular case, if I deleted that clearance, that would be set back to the plumbing fixtures, which is the top level category, which is set to black solid. Now that may or may not be what I want. So, it's sort of, it's good to understand these items. And so that's where it is all about the risk assessment. So like in this case, what if I do remove this line style or I make a change? What is it going to impact? And so ID8 Style Manager is all about that, showing you what information is going to be impacted by those potential modifications. Again, you need to merge non-standard materials or non-standard styles together. And so now this is giving you a way to be able to do that. So let's go ahead and just take a look at this. I'm going to come back over here to Revit, and I'm just going to come over here to my first floor equipment plan, right? It doesn't really matter which view I'm in, but I'm going to, because Style Manager looks at the entire project here. So when I first bring up Style Manager, it brings up some information. There's a quick start guide, there's some frequently asked questions, but you'll notice that I can basically sort of browse to these different styles, and this is what I was talking about, that they don't all kind of fit into a nice bucket. You know, scope boxes, view templates, filters, material appearances, and materials are not necessarily styles, but we kind of put them all together into sort of managing these pieces of information. So a good example is, like, for instance, you know, line styles. If I select on that, what it's going to do is basically say, well, these are all of the lines styles that are defined in the project. And right away, you see some colors here. Those colors represent duplicate pieces of information. So for instance, this line 0 and this line 00, this one actually have the same definition. You see there, the line weight is 1 and the color is 0. So as an example, let's just take a look at those two, and I can now analyze those and basically say, well, are they being used, right? And so in this particular case, this line 0 is actually being used by 148 pieces of information. It's in a group. It's also under elements, and you'll see as I can scroll down here, all these things are using that particular line style. And so I now have the ability to either rename that, right? You know, I can come over here to rename that, or I can merge it. Like in this particular case, I know that I could actually remove this. So I can say delete, because nothing's using that. I know that that's okay. And you see here it says lines, it was removed, and that's fine. And so I can kind of go through and start to sort of look at this information. If I come over here to, let's say, fill patterns, I can say, well, you know what? I want to search for concrete. And there you see I've got this information. The question mark means that it hasn't been analyzed yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a shift on all these and just say analyze. So what this is going to now do is all of those fill patterns, right, that match concrete, right, you'll see that it's going to go through the entire project and see, you know, where they are being used. And you know, then it gives me the information that I can decide whether I want to delete them or rename them or merge them together. And you can see that the selections here, I have, like, for instance, show me the ones that I haven't analyzed yet, or show me the you know, the built-in ones, the built-in categories that I was talking about. So in this case, you see that, for instance, this concrete model 1 has 0, right? I can get rid of that. This insulation is actually under 3 detail items. Masonry concrete block is used in quite a few of these different families, right? And there's also an element here, detail item for CMU concrete masonry unit. But I have the ability to actually go and select on these families. I can make a change, or I can actually edit the family itself. So if I want to open up that family and look and see, you see that now I'm actually in that family itself, right? And then I can say, well, you know what? Okay, where's that information, or do I want to change it? But it gives me the ability, like I said, very nicely to be able to kind of forensically understand what's going on here. And then I also have the ability to look at filters. For instance, I've got this, I only have one filter here in my project. I can analyze it and basically say that, okay, it's used in these 2 different views, right? Or do I have some view templates here that are used? Like, I believe I have a, let's see, do I have an ID8 plan one? Let's say architectural plan. And in fact, it's automatically selected these, and it's saying that, okay, I don't have any of these in use right now. So as an example, if I come over here and say, well, you know what, I want to actually come down here and select, let's do this view template. Let's do architectural plan here. So I'm going to select that. And by the way, you'll notice that as I can continue working, just like with ID8 Explorer, I can work in the view, and I can have the this basically still be in the background. Now, because I made a change there, I want to update this. And notice right away, you see that, once I refreshed, it says, oh, architectural plan, that view template is now used in this view, first floor equipment and furniture. So now, obviously I'm in that view, but if I wasn't, for an example, I can select show, and then that's going to open up that view where I can see where that view template is used. And I don't believe I have any scope boxes defined in this project, but that would also show as well. So I think that's really nice, being able to understand exactly, are these view templates, like in this particular case, maybe this reflected ceiling plan, I have this view template and this architectural section, I'm going to highlight those two, and I'm going to say, you know what, I'm just going to delete those because I'm not using those in my project. So this little information window comes up and basically says that those have been removed. So again, all of this, with any one of these, it gives you the ability to, analyze, search for things, analyze, merge, delete information very easily. So as you see there, with ID8 Style Manager, you can sort of understand when you've loaded all this content in, kind of do a risk assessment. You can fix and standardize pieces of data or information, and you can delete imported category or delete any real, whether it's a category or, like I said, a particular style that doesn't match your standards. So all of these 5 solutions are now available as a subscription bundle. And so if you're interested, let's say you've got, for instance, just ID8 Sticky, or you've got ID8 Sticky and BIM Link, and you're interested in the other 3 solutions, we have some really nice bundle packages that are available at a very reasonable price to kind of get you all of the 5 solutions from ID8 Software. So I would encourage everyone to just contact sales@id8software.com. You can also visit our website, which does have some information on these bundle packages. But if you've only got 1 or 2 or 3 of our solutions, and you're interested in kind of having the other ID8 software solutions, we have a number of packages that will get you to all 5 solutions at a very reasonable price. So with that, I want to thank everyone for your time and attention today, and please feel free to contact us at www.id8software.com. And then, of course, you see on the screen there, you can always follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. So I want to thank everyone for their time and attention today. We're almost at the top of the hour. I appreciate that. And again, my name is Richard Taylor with ID8 Software, and have a good day.